We are billboards for our values. And as a dad, we have a lot riding on that. It's shit. The state of things is shit. The state of men and dads in particular, it's like it's an excuse to fall apart. Do the smallest thing possible. But if you're going to drink like a man. It's whiskey and black coffee. And lift some weights and you'll be fine. If you base your diet around protein, your whole life gets better. I've been on a lot of stages, bled in front of people. I've had my face broken up. I've passed out. Well, no one's going to hit me. Nothing's going to fall on me. And so I go, this is what I do. And you do that 20, 30 minutes, 2 to 4 times a week. You're going to be great. Dads are getting a bad name in the health and fitness realm. There's 2 options. You can hit rock bottom, or you can decide not to hit rock bottom. And if you go down that path, you will hit rock bottom. You can't live a David Goggins life when you have a wife, kids, a mortgage. And that was it. That was the whole plan. And in a year, he lost 20, 25 kilos.
Let's do some rapid fire questions. What does it mean to eat like an adult? What's the big deal with ice baths these days? What is the playground test? What do you have against burpees? Hot take indeed. What is your best advice for a down and out dad right now? Hey dads, welcome back to the show. Today we've got a treat. We have Josh Wood. He is a fitness expert, a coach, a tactical athlete. This man has done it all. He's been on a TEDx stage. He's got some great nuggets he's going to drop on us today. Expect to learn why protein is a superfood, the state of health for dads in today's society, why dads are hitting rock bottom and how to dig out. What does it mean to eat like an adult? What he has against burpees and ice baths, and many, many more things. Stick with me. This is a fantastic conversation with Josh Wood. Let's get into it right here now. Tell us a little bit about yourself, sir.
Oh boy. Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. About me. Yeah. So if you're listening to this, I probably don't sound very Australian. It's because I grew up in Minnesota. A Midwest kid, moved out to Australia. When I met an Australian girl while traveling, I was traveling in Scotland. We met in a hostel back in 2007, moved to Australia in 2008. Been out here ever since. Settled down in Tasmania, which is an island about the size of Ireland, off the south coast of Australia. And this is where I've settled down and started a family and been living for the last 6 years. My work has primarily been in health education and fitness education. So I teach the personal training courses here in Australia. And prior to that, I taught the massage courses, certifications in that. Been in fitness in some aspect or another for, almost 15 years now. So been at it for a while. Spent a little time coaching primarily boxing and kickboxing before going back into general fitness and strength focus. I'm kind of a compulsive competitor. So competed in jiu-jitsu, boxing, strongman, powerlifting, traditional archery. I hold a state title in that. Just try to help people get strong for life in whatever aspect I can.
That's awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So Tasmanian based, you did the TEDx talk. What was it like standing on that TEDx stage for the first time?
It's wild. So that's, it's funny. A lot of people ask about the talk, but not a lot about the experience. And the experience is a crazy thing. So I was the only health and fitness guy there. We had a cohort of about 12 people, maybe it was 13. And we had about 10 speakers, and there was 2 or 3 performers, and it was a full day event. So we're in a theater, the type with the balcony seating and all that, and the red seats. You're on the stage and you're just blinded. And that was the thing. That's the thing I always remember, is not being able to see. We had a rehearsal the week before, or at the beginning of the week. It was a Monday rehearsal and then a Saturday event. And I get up on the stage and, I've been speaking in public and teaching in front of classes and running workshops and seminars for forever. I don't have any problem speaking. I like to talk to people and talk about the things I'm passionate about. But the thing that stuck out to me was how little I could see. Because I'm normally in front of people on the same level, speaking with the group and teaching things. And there I was elevated above with spotlights in my face. And I was like, this is this is weird. Like, this is disconcerting. And so that whole week, I set up all, like, I've got these lights around me and stuff for videos and content making and whatnot. And I just took all of my lights, put them directly in front of my face, and just like blinded myself while practicing my talk for the whole week. And that was the thing that really was wild to me, is this like unable to see who you're speaking to sort of situation while trying to speak to them, and when you're normally in an education role, uh, or a facilitation role, it's a lot about knowing who you're talking to and talking to them where they are, like what level they're on, and helping sort of make a personal connection there. And so that by far was the strangest aspect of it. It's like, how do I make a personal connection with a whole bunch of shadows? And I was really like concerned about that. I was like, man, like, because my talk is, like, for anyone who hasn't heard it, it's 6 habits to eat like an adult. And the whole thing was like, I went out there to call people out and be like, yo, you don't eat like adults, and we need to fix that. And it's kind of a heavy topic, but at the same time, I have to call people out in a way that they'll be receptive to. And so it's like, can I do that when I can't see who I'm talking to and can't see how they're responding, can't make that personal connection very well? So it was a very different kind of experience to the type of speaking I've done. And like when I do talks now, I'll go and do talks for you know, like public health stuff. So we've got some insurance companies here. They put on public health talks and education series, and I'll talk in front of people. And yeah, I'll be on a stage and stuff, but I can see them. And so the theater aspect was very different for me. But otherwise, it's a massive event. It's something that people don't think about when they see these 15-minute videos on YouTube, is that each one of these events is like a full day thing at a minimum. Some of them are 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, I believe it. Absolutely. I always talk to people and they say, oh yeah, I'm not worried about speaking in front of people at all. And, I just spoke to about 2,000 people last week in Clearwater, Florida, and I still get those nerves that really start right at the beginning, and you worry about it in the morning, and then you think about it, and getting up on stage, what did you do to kind of calm yourself down? I mean, we'll get into the fitness stuff, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, like it's like competition. I've been on a lot of stages. I've had the absolute bejesus kicked out of me. I've bled in front of people. I've had my face broken up. I've been on stages lifting things I shouldn't be allowed to lift. I've passed out when I did the strongman competition under a steel log. Like, I'm looking at it, this whole like history I have with public display, and thinking, well, no one's gonna hit me. Nothing's gonna fall on me. Like, I'm not gonna break my back. There's really nothing on the line here, like nothing terrible. And so I go, this is what I do. And it's the same with competition. Every time I go into a competition, whether it's combat sports or strength sports or whatever, I just go, people are always like, oh, are you worried? Are you jazzed up? Are you excited? Are you nervous? I'm like, it's just another day of work. This is what I do. And I just have to put myself in a mindset. It's like, yeah, I've got nerves, and I know my stuff. But as soon as I got out on stage, it was like, it's just a day of work.
That's awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, we all can take an appreciation for, all right, we're doing something that looks stressful to the outside world, but if you just put it in perspective, this is what I do, this is my job. We're talking a lot about fatherhood to my channel, and you got a lot of crazy things that are happening around the house, but this is just what's happening today. This is a normal day. You just got to take it, roll with the punches, so to speak, right, and move forward. So. Yeah. Cool. Thanks for that. Well, let's dive into some more, technical stuff. I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts on all things fitness, eating like an adult. I definitely want to hear from you about that. But why don't you start, if you can kind of just give me and set the stage from your perspective, what is the state of health for men, specifically for men who are dads in today's world and today's society?
What is the policy on foul words on the show?
Hey man, do what you got to do.
Okay, it's shit. The state of things is shit. State of men, excuse me. The state of men and dads in particular, it's like it's an excuse to fall apart. Now, obviously, sometimes life is going to kick you in the nuts. I've personally been kicked in the nuts a lot lately. Not literally. Sometimes if you got young kids, you get kicked in the nuts. But I mean, more figuratively. I've had a series of injuries, ruptured my ankle like 6 weeks ago, tore my pec like 5 weeks ago, and I've just had it reattached. 3 weeks. I'm in a sling right now. I'm like just like a series of illnesses running through the house, from conjunctivitis to strep throat. Like we've all just been beaten. So that stuff you can't do too much about. But the area you have a choice in is the chronic state of health, the ongoing way that you live, but not just live, but present yourself. We are billboards for our values. And as a dad, we have a lot riding on that. What do our kids pick up and who do they become? That depends on how we portray ourselves, how we carry ourselves through the world. And unfortunately, the added infinite amount of stress and fatigue that comes with having kids and a family, and the stresses, the financial stresses that everyone's dealing with now, and all that comes with that package, it shouldn't be an excuse. But it is an excuse for men to just be like, I deserve to have all these wings and all this beer. And you know what? I'm just so tired. I just need to watch 3 hours of Netflix tonight. It's the only thing that's going to cure me. And it's like, no, man, like this is why, the dad bod is such a popular talking point. It's because dads are getting a bad name in the health and fitness realm.
I kind of figured you would say that, and I can see it as well, right? And it's definitely something to dive deeper in, I think, as well, Josh, when we're talking about being a father in today's society. You have this excuse to fall apart. It can be pretty lonely. If you're working a corporate W-2 job, you get up in the morning, you help out your wife, you help out your kids, you get them out the door, you go to your job all day long. And you don't have time for relationships with other men, to cultivate the things that you want to do to grow in life. You don't have the ability to focus on the things that you used to before you had kids, but you don't want to blame your kids or your wife for that. So
yeah,
it's so easy to fall into this lane of woe is me, my life is over. And that's something that I'm so passionate about, trying to say there is another way. There's a great way for you to both have kids, have a wife, provide for them, and live your best life. So how can we kind of get out of that excuse of falling apart, allow that shit to fall into place? What kind of things do you suggest for us to be able to break out of that cycle?
Well, there's two options. Both of them culminate in a decision. But there's two options. You can hit rock bottom, or you can decide not to hit rock bottom. When you hit rock bottom, you don't have a choice. And then you are forced to make a choice. If you see others in that situation, you can learn from them. If you're smart, you can go, that's not how I want to do things. And really, you have to accept that there's a choice and there's going to be compromise. And one of the things, there's some great motivational people out there who are not particularly helpful in the long run. So like the big names like, your Jocko Willinks and your David Goggins, man, they are hardcore. And if you need a kick in the butt to get going in the morning, listen to some of their talks. Listen to like, I don't know if you know the artist Akira the Don. He's a music producer, and he does like these meaning wave, like motivational, speeches with music kind of thing. Those things are great, but you can't live a David Goggins life when you have a wife, kids, a mortgage, you're not famous, you're not rich, and you don't hate yourself. So you have to compromise. And those guys can get you going, but there's an element, and I know it's a hard thing to say in this day and age, but there's an element of discipline as well, and you have to make a decision to create discipline, to create a framework for success. And then you have to compromise and realize that you are not going to perform at the level of David Goggins, at the level of Cameron Haynes or Jocko Willink or any of these big names in the men's motivational sphere. Not when your kids are young, not when you don't have time, not when you haven't got your business and your finances on lock. You're going to have to compromise. And maybe that compromise is, I'm going to start taking care of my health and fitness by walking. I'm just going to take a walk every day. I'm going to make sure I get my protein. I'm going to cut the number of sugary or alcoholic drinks I do across the week in half. And you start small and take baby steps and realize you're not going to wake up one day and run an ultra marathon in bare feet. It's like these are super long-term aspirations that these guys have built their lives around. But for the average person, there's almost this false dichotomy of going, oh, if I can't do everything, I'm not going to do anything. And if you go down that path, you will hit rock bottom. And it might not be soon. It might be when you're 65 and you realize you're obese, diabetic, and you're dying. Or it can happen now. You could have an injury, an illness, or something that puts you at rock bottom, and then you have to make a change. But ideally, you use the motivation from wherever you can get it to go, okay, now I need to make a small change and then build from there. But so many people are afraid of just making the small changes. They're sort of in this like paralysis by analysis. If I can't do everything, I'm doing nothing. Or there's too many things and I can't figure out where to start. But again, like I said, it comes down to a decision. You either have to make it when there's no other choice, or you can make that choice now and do something and understand that you're going to have to compromise. You might not hit the gym 7 days a week. You might be able to go once a week. It's still winning. It's still better. And it's going to make you better and better every time you go and do that.
What does rock bottom look like?
Man, it could be bad. It could be health. When you have these young guys in their 30s and their 40s who have heart attacks or find out they have diabetes, it could be the ill health and weakness that comes from lifestyle that leads to a trip and a fall and an injury, or the inability to play with your kids anymore. It could be a lack of effort in the business or financial realms, and you could have everything crashing around you, and then you're stuck. Like, it can be different for anybody, but it's a state of you no longer have as many choices as you did, and you have to dig your way out.
Acknowledging that, I think, is the hardest part, right? Knowing that you are either on the way, have hit, or about to hit rock bottom. So you've articulated some of the warning signs of that type of thing, and you've talked about some of the things that you can do to dig out, right? All right, so let's say somebody's on the way, they're almost there, they've had a scare. What are some tangible things that they can do within the next, say, 1 to 5 weeks to just start to slowly see some progress and get out of that rock bottom state?
Yeah, so let's say it's health related, just because that's more my domain. If it's a health related thing, I always have the same answer. Do the smallest thing possible. A lot of people feel really overwhelmed with giving up their creature comforts. I tend, when I work with people, I tend not to focus on giving up. I tend to focus on adding in an additive approach, because it's inherently more positive because we're adding stuff. So I'll be like, okay, add in something that is good. And ideally, you stack these habits over time. So, everyone's like, oh, I don't have time to exercise, but I have 1 million hours to scroll on my phone and watch TV. Okay, so that's a hard habit to break. So let's add in something very small. And again, let's go back to walking. None of us, well, not none of us, but a lot of people don't walk enough. I don't walk enough, but I do other things. And the easiest way to sort of integrate that is to habit stack. You eat a meal at least 2 to 3 times a day. Most people do. Every time you eat a meal, you walk for 10 minutes. I don't care if you walk while eating. I don't care if you walk before or after. But if there is a meal, you do 10 minutes of walking. Okay, sure, you don't like walking, you don't have the space. You can ride on a spin bike. You can ride your bike, whatever it is. You need to move for 10 minutes. 10 minutes, 3 times a day. That's 3.5 hours a week. That's 3.5 hours of exercise that I know people have an excuse not to do. But when you break it up and stack it on top of something else, it becomes too easy. You need to integrate it. And then next week, it's all right. Now let's just try to break that, or maybe 2 to 3 weeks. They've done 30 minutes of walking a day. They've done that for a few weeks. They've started to stack up that habit. It's easy. Okay, well, either we extend those times or we combine them. Let's try to get 2 20-minute walks or 1 30-minute walk, and then slowly stack that up over time. And then once these things become lifestyle, like brushing your teeth, you don't need to find time to brush your teeth. You don't need to, get yourself ready and change your clothes and get all set up to brush your teeth. You don't even have to think about it. Everybody just does it. And so when we start small and ingrain these habits and stack them with other things we already do, then it's no longer a mental load. And then we can start leveraging things. Now you start feeling better, getting a little bit more energy. We can start leveraging that. We get the small end of the wedge in with 10 minutes of walking. 6 months down the line, you're doing 30-minute walk every day. And now you're getting in, 2 or 3 15 to 30-minute body weight training sessions in a week, because we just start with baby steps. And it's really about just finding that smallest possible thing you can do where you just can't have an excuse and doing it. And then the more you do that, the less you have to think about it. Because it's a mental load thing too. It's often more that than the physical. It's the daunting idea that I have to do something else. But if we combine things, that habit stacking, again, is just something that works so well for people. Like one of the things I find works really well for office workers is having a walking pad at their desk, or switching to a standing desk. Or like I have a little spin bike under my desk. It's just little pedals because I got an A-frame office. I can't stand. So I got the little spin bike under there. I got that off Marketplace. It cost me $100. It's going to last a lifetime. It's great. So if we can take something that you do already and start adding a healthy thing on top of that, it just becomes part of the daily process. And then it's easier to build on top of that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And then once you get the building going and you're able to integrate that into your lifestyle, now you talk about the other component, which is a lot of things that you focus on, which is, we don't like to say, especially when as guys, that we have to be on a diet, right? So yeah. I guess that would be the first point is, how do we look at how we eat and not have the stigma of being, on a feminine diet, and what kind of components from an eating perspective, all right, you're integrating this little change of fitness into your lifestyle. How do you complement that now with the food that you put in your body?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. The term diet across the board, like it says, has all these connotations. We have these ideas of what that means, but diet is just the overall eating pattern. We can be put on a diet for a goal, like a weight loss diet. For men, it's usually about framing it again in a positive. We're not eating to lose weight. We're not eating to get skinny. We're gonna get jacked. We're trying to build muscle. I'm eating to not be weak. I'm eating to be strong. And actually for guys, a lot of times this is super easy because like one of my favorite case studies is one of my clients who's a young accountant, and he was 120 kilos, something like that. Sorry, everything I do is metric. And
yes.
He's
2.2. That's heavy.
Yeah, he's a big dude. He's 6'4". He's just a tall, chubby guy, weak, couldn't even do a body weight squat. He just drank too much, and his diet was garbage. And I'm not gonna be like, eat more salads. It's just not gonna work for him. So we put him on what I called the cowboy diet. You don't drink beer anymore. You don't drink wine. You don't drink mixed drinks. You eat steak, and if you're gonna drink, it's spirits. You drink whiskey and you eat steak like a cowboy. And then we train 3 days a week. And that was it. That was the whole plan. And in a year, he lost, what did he lose? 20, 25 kilos, 50 pounds kind of thing.
Yeah.
It was all the extra garbage that he was eating. But it's not that you got to take these things out so much. The alcohol is a problem. But when it came to his diet, it's you base every meal around either steak or chicken. Eat as much as that as much of that as you want. And the weight just fell off because he wasn't trying to fill himself with all this extra garbage. He was actually satisfied. And then once he gained that momentum and that weight started falling off, he's like, oh, no, this is great. I feel good. I look good. And then the girl he liked decided to marry him. So it all worked out really well. And he attributes that to the fact that he got buff. So I like to frame it around the things that we like, and adding in, you just need more steak in your life. You just need more steak, and you need to, if you're going to drink, I'd prefer if you didn't, but if you're going to drink like a man. It's whiskey and black coffee. and lift some weights and you'll be fine. And so, framing that, and honestly, like that's a harder approach to a lot of the women I work with. It's harder for them. They want to eat the greens. They think, oh, I need more vegetables in my life. And it's like, listen, those are good for you. But if we're really trying to just lose some weight and gain some muscle, it's not the most important thing right now. So framing is really, really important. And knowing who you're talking to and what drives them. I think there just isn't a one size fits all. I mean, in theory, we could create a diet that is, but the framing isn't. How we explain what's important. Because the same diet is going to make, a stay-at-home mom lean and toned. She's going to be smaller and lose 3 dress sizes. The same diet is going to make a dude lean and jacked. It's meat and veg. Meat, veg, don't drink too much extra sugar, don't drink too much alcohol, lift some weights. Works for everybody. But the framing doesn't work for everybody. And the framing is probably the most important part.
Fascinating. So let's dive a little bit more into the foods in particular, in terms of the do's and the don'ts. I mean, I hear this a lot these days. Protein is really huge. You just kind of articulated it there, right? So chicken, meat, if you can dive a little bit deeper into the importance of those and really why.
Yep.
And what should we not be eating? Starches, obviously sugars and things like that. But yeah, talk more about protein.
Right. So I'm not dogmatic about nutrition. I don't think there is a specific diet. I don't believe in good and bad foods. I believe in more and less effective for your goals. Some people do not do well with some things. Some people do better with them. Just because you don't do well with something doesn't mean it's going to be a problem for me. Protein, though, is a building block. If you base your diet around protein, your whole life gets better. You are more sated. You feel fuller. You have better blood sugar regulation most of the time. It kind of increases your metabolism a little bit, but more importantly, your entire body is made out of protein. And people forget this. And it's like your hair, skin, and nails, protein. All your organs and structures, protein. You need protein for your immune system, your bones. The reason that they are hard or rigid is because of collagen, which is a protein. The mineral content fills in the spaces around the collagen fibers. So if you think of like a concrete wall, the concrete's the minerals, but it's the rebar that gives it the rigidity and the ability to withstand a lot of forces. So we need protein for everything. And not to mention our muscle mass. The biggest element of driving our metabolism is how much muscle mass we have. Our ability to interact with the world is based on muscle mass. We're blinking our eyes. We're, talking. Our tongue is a muscle. Like everything that we do to interact on any level with the world is based on muscle mass. And if we want to age healthily, so increase our health span and our quality of life, one of the best things you can do, and one of the biggest predictors of longevity, is having a lot of lean mass, meaning muscle mass and bone mass. You want to be strong and capable. And so protein is the foundational building block of those things. If we don't have enough protein, not only do we not have the ability to regenerate from daily stresses, we don't have the ability to improve, to grow, become more resilient, to become harder to kill. So protein is the most essential of the food group focuses. We don't probably need as much as most bodybuilders eat, but if we do look at the people who are most able to optimize their body, athletes, bodybuilders, things like that, and we look at what they eat and how they fuel themselves, it's about getting enough energy and maximizing protein intake so your body can build as much useful tissue as it can.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, you really don't think about it. It's been the diet du jour for years and years and years. Eat more salad, as you said, eat more veggies, but protein. And I think that's going to be one of the key takeaways from our talk today is eat like a cowboy, right? There's a lot of people, myself included, I'd love to have a beer. I love to have a Coors Light. I love to, eat cheesy pasta, but just have
Delicious.
some protein.
Yeah. And, it also helps you feel more nourished. I remember doing a nutrition talk. I was living in Canada for a couple of years a while back. And I remember doing a nutrition talk at the gym I was working at. This one lady was just astounded about how much protein she was supposed to eat. She's been trying so hard to lose weight. She's just trying to eat salads all the time. I'm like, protein, 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 protein. And no, nuts are not a protein source. They're not a useful protein source. They're fine. And she's like, okay, whatever, I'll try it. And she comes in, a couple months later to a kickboxing class, and she's like, I lost 10 pounds and I'm not tired all the time. And I'm like, what'd you do? Well, I just focused all my real meals around getting protein. I was like, see, you feel better? You look better? Any complaints? She's like, no, I don't have to eat salads all the time. And just to clarify, salads are good for you. Vegetables are good for you. They have a lot of health benefits, but they're not necessarily the foundation of health. They're a good to have, and even in some cases a necessary to have, because there's certain vitamins like vitamin C that we get from plants. But if you're trying to optimize your performance, how you look, feel, and perform, you have to hit your protein targets. They don't have to be massive, but you need to hit your minimums, and then there's an optimum range as well. And when you hit that, then everything sort of starts to fall into place.
What's your diet look like in a given week? I know you're still active. You're still really into fitness. You just were working out before we started talking today. What does it look like for you?
It's pretty. I'm kind of boring. I kind of live off of yogurt. Like Greek yogurt is like a big staple. Let's see, what is today's food? So I do a lot of paneer for breakfast. Paneer is like Indian cottage cheese. I like food with spice and flavor, and I'm actually working with a chef now to create a cookbook all about Indian food, but focused on the nutrition aspect, so flavor and function. So that's hopefully coming out first quarter next year. But so I do a lot of Indian food and Asian fusion stuff. So I do a lot of paneer for breakfast, or I do like I've got a cottage cheese protein pancake that I make a lot, especially on the weekends because it's delicious and the kids and everybody loves it. In a pinch, it's just yogurt and granola. My favorite, like, I have nothing left to eat, but I need to hit my protein target snack/meal is like Rice Krispies with a protein shake over the top. I get some carbohydrate, a little fiber, and then I get some dairy nutrients and protein. Easy. So I'll usually do some sort of like yogurt protein shake thing 1 to 2 times a day. Breakfast will be either eggs, bacon, toast. I got chickens, got a lot of eggs. So be some sort of egg meal, paneer, protein pancake, or yogurt. Lunches is usually leftovers, and dinners are usually some sort of meat and veg. Like real simple stuff. I'm not complicated, but I do like a little bit of spice when I have the time to prep it. So I think last night we had a curry. I had a curry for dinner. Some leftover curry we had in the freezer. Chicken curry. And then the night before that was like just roast pork. I think we're going to do a roast beef tomorrow. Honestly, tonight's takeaway night. So one night a week, we go to a local food van and do takeaway there, which is always a family favorite. But other than that, it's simple stuff. It's just a lot of yogurt, eggs, meat and veg, normal stuff, and just in the right amounts,
Yeah. And I think it's a key point. I mean, you obviously aren't counting calories and making sure that you're staying low on that stuff. You're also active, so kind of counterbalancing the calorie and caloric intake. So you talked about the guy that's now off of rock bottom, doing the walking, now wants to start getting more fit, more active, more in the gym. What's kind of a good, appreciable, normal dad workouts that you would recommend? What kind of things? I mean, body weight's typically pretty easy, but what's a good workout regimen?
So, body weight is easy because you don't need stuff, but it's actually really hard, especially if you're out of shape or overweight, because you can't change the weight of what you're lifting. So if you're, again, 120 kilos, push-ups are hard. Body weight squats are hard. Can I throw an extra 50 kilos on my back and squat? Sure. But if you're untrained, body weight can be pretty tough, and it's limiting on your ability to train, say, arms and back, because unless you have something like a pull-up bar or a rack or rings or a TRX, you don't really have the ability to pull, and pulling is really important. So body weight can be fine, but I start most people off because I work with a lot of newbies. Newbies, my whole business is online. So I work with a lot of newbies that train at home. And the two things that I say that everyone should start off with, that you can start off with for under $50, is a couple of exercise bands, elastic bands. You can get them at Walmart. They're cheap. You just need a couple of those. That or those like cheap interchangeable weight dumbbell sets. I've got like 3 of those that I've picked up on Marketplace and garage sales, and friends gave them to me when they moved and things like that. And those things, you can pick up weights for super cheap. They got the handles that you can load up with as much as you want. Very, very versatile, very affordable. Usually you can get them secondhand with a bunch of little weights. Really handy. You get those 2 things, either one or the other or both, you can basically train for the first 2, maybe 3 years of your gym life with just those in your living room. Not a problem. You can just so many variations. And then you just really need to have there's 6 primary movements. There's a squat, there's a hinge. A hinge is like picking something off the ground. Squat is sitting down and standing up. There's a push, pushing something away from you, pushing away from your chest, pushing above your head. There's pulls, so horizontal pull, vertical pull, just like the pushes. And then we have like core-based movements, and then locomotion. So it's squat, hinge, push, pull, core, and locomotion. And locomotion is walking, or bear crawls, or ground-based things like Turkish get-ups, or like holding weight and walking, filling a backpack with water bottles and walking over some hills. Something that's complex but involves crossing distance. So again, like I mentioned, backpack with water bottles. You got a backpack and some water bottles, you can do a ton of stuff. And that's like absolute budget friendly, no excuses kind of training. Works fine. But if you put those 6 movements in most workouts across the week, or even just a squat, hinge, push, pull, and you do that 20, 30 minutes, 2 to 4 times a week, you're going to be great. You're going to be, fit, capable, and in the top 10% of people in the world. It doesn't take a lot. And, unfortunately, the bar is pretty low. But again, it's this like simplify stuff. You don't need a gym membership. I've worked in gyms for 12, 13 years now. I still just do all my training at home. Like in my office here, I've got Olympic rings. Back when I had both my pecs attached to my body, I did a lot of that stuff. This workout I just did before here, I just did in the garage. You got a couple benches, a couple, secondhand pieces of simple machinery, bands, dumbbells. I got a bit more in there, but most of my stuff is dumbbells and bands because it's easy. I don't have any excuses not to do stuff. I just go down to my garage. And if you just have those simple things and understand those primary movements, it's easy just to do something. And again, don't overcomplicate things. Unless you're doing something sport specific, keep it simple. Just getting stronger, improving your range of motion is going to make everything in life better.
Where does cardio come into that picture? I mean, obviously you're doing the walking, but do you need to have a high heart rate for a prolonged period of time to kind of help, keep the engine revving?
That is a great question. Cardio is really good for your heart. It's really good for your long-term health. Anything that raises your heart rate is cardio. So with those same equipment, with those same movements, if you sling those together in a circuit, you're doing cardio, and you don't need to leave more than a 3x3 square in your living room. So I don't like running. I do it periodically because I live in a very hilly area, and I like to be up in the trails, and I like to see out in nature. And sometimes I don't have a lot of time to backpack and to hike, or actually, no, I never have a lot of time to backpack and hike. So if I want to see stuff and be outside, I kind of got to run it. So I'll do that periodically, almost seasonally. The main cardio is jiu-jitsu these days. You want to do cardio for your health, but you want to build muscle mass for probably more improvements in your activities of daily living, more improvements in quality of life. So why not do both? There's no reason you can't do them simultaneously, especially if you're new to this whole training thing. Get some weights, set up a circuit, don't take rests, just keep moving. Do that for 30 minutes. You're going to end up jacked, lean, and in good shape with a healthy heart.
That's good to know. I mean, again, you always hear, oh, you got to be on the treadmill or the elliptical for 30 minutes, and then you got to do the actual physical part of it. So that's good to know.
There's a
You're
lot
just
of
combining
benefit to that, but it's just if the heart rate's elevated, your body doesn't care how it's elevated. It doesn't know the difference. It doesn't know you're on an elliptical. It just raises the heart rate to accommodate for the need of blood supply and oxygen through the body. There's a million and one ways to do that.
That's awesome. Cool. Let's switch up a little bit. During your TED Talk, you talked a little bit about mindfulness, eating more mindfully. In particular, around mindfulness and that component, is meditation something that you engage in? Is that even a discussion that we should have for dads in today's crazy environment, where mindfulness meditation should come into play?
Do you have a definition for what meditation is?
Yeah, I actually stay pretty active in meditation, so obviously it's a little loaded question. From my perspective, meditation is just simply focusing on one thing, typically your breath. And when your mind starts to wander off, inevitably, you acknowledge the mind wandering, bring it back to your breath, and it just expands and conditions your mind muscle to notice when you're going through stuff during the day. And as you said, you want to choose to eat some of those chips or a candy bar. Acknowledge you're doing that and maybe just grab that red Tasmanian apple, right? So that's kind of
There it
my
is.
thought on meditation, is just focusing on your breath to be able to train yourself to be more mindful in the moment, to acknowledge that your mind is going off in that crazy time and then coming back to the present. That's my thought on it, at least.
Yep. So I tend not to push, breathing practices have a lot of benefit. I tend not to push any formalized style of meditation, although I know it's beneficial for a lot of people. Meditation for me has always been one thing: movement. And I feel like there's nothing that makes you more focused on the now and the breath as trying to chase your breath. And what are the mindfulness benefits, and where are we going to get as many birds with as few stones as possible? Again, it comes down to just doing something, and then once we get to the ability of doing general regular exercise, I think that becomes a meditative practice for a lot of people. And I wrote a blog post many years ago on my website where I posit that for me at the time, my meditation was boxing. And my meditation has always been movement. And if we look at a lot of really traditional styles of meditation, especially through China, Japan, and India, meditation has always had a moving component. And so I'm kind of, there's a certain discipline that comes with a focused breathing practice outside of movement. But because we're so limited on time as dads, I would say, well, if you can do that, great. But why not combine things? Why not find a moving practice that allows you to focus, whether it's on your breath or whether it's on the sensations of the body, whether it's about getting out of your mind and into your body, because there's a lot of variations on what and how meditation is done depending on your background. A lot of people do mantras as a focus point. A lot of people focus on physical sensations, the feeling of the breath through the nose, the feeling of the chest breathing into the lower abdomen, the center of the forehead, that kind of thing. So a focus point to focus on can be many things. And if we can integrate other healthful practices, and again, this is coming from a standpoint of how do we do the most with our limited time? How do we remove obstacles that get in the way of promoting healthy living? Still focusing on the health of dads. And it's like, well, how many new things can we add into life? And how many things can we combine?
Makes perfect sense. Especially, even something as simple as doing push-ups, being very focused on doing that push-up, not letting your mind wander. Cool. That's a really good way to think about it. I haven't thought about that before.
And that's something, on that note, this is something I think more hypertrophy and bodybuilder style training excels at, is that mind muscle connection, being super connected with the target muscles and really really just being in the movement and focusing on the feeling of the muscle and making sure that's activating as much as possible. I think there's a good opportunity there for mindfulness.
Very cool. And I like it when you're talking about how we eat from a mindful perspective. And you mentioned it in your TED Talk, but if you're reaching for something because you think you're hungry and you decide, well, am I hungry? Can I eat this apple? Is that something that I would want to have? And you say, yes. Okay, great. Eat the apple. But if you don't want the apple, that means you're not hungry, right? And that's just another mindfulness component. Just, hey, what's happening in my mind, in my stomach right now that's making me think this way?
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. All right, let's do some rapid fire questions. 20,
All right.
30-second answers. These are just some kind of fun things that we talked about. And you mentioned it at the beginning. We don't have to dive too deeply into it, but what does it mean to eat like an adult?
Eating like an adult means making mindful decisions and taking ownership of the outcomes. That's it. Got to bring that mindfulness in and actually make conscious decisions.
Perfect. You've mentioned this before, but if you can dive deeper, what is the playground test?
That's one I'm kind of failing now because I've only got one functional arm. But the idea is that if you were taking your kids to the playground, you should never have the excuse to not play along with them. You should be able to use that equipment just as well as they can. You should be able to go out and be on the swings and use the monkey bars. And I mean, okay, some of the slides are a bit small. Some of the little tunnels are a bit small. All right, there's an issue there. But in general, the playground should be your playground. And if you pass the playground test, that means you can use the playground as well as your kids and keep up with them.
I think that's probably one of the key components of our whole discussion, right? I even find myself, all right, I'm listening to a podcast, I'm watching this great TEDx talk from Hobart, but I'm not engaging with my kids on the playground and we're out there. Put the phone down. I'm just as guilty of this. Play with the kids. Do some pull-ups while you're in there, things like that. That's great. What do you have against burpees?
I think that burpees are the most poorly programmed exercise in the current fitness world. I think they mostly are programmed from a lack of knowledge on the coach's point and from a bit of laziness or sadism. It's a movement that's typically programmed because it's hard, but any child can pull random exercises out of a hat or tell someone to spin around in circles until they throw up. That doesn't mean it's useful. So I think that the risk to reward ratio for burpees is usually not good. It's often given to newbies, and it's actually a fairly complex and dangerous movement. You get a lot of older, overweight people throwing themselves on the ground. They can't even do a push-up. They can't do a squat. Why are they throwing themselves onto the ground and then trying to jump up off the ground? Why are they doing it and jumping over boxes? Like, the risk to reward ratio isn't there for most people. And the amount that it's programmed just to make people's lives hard instead of training them to be more productive or training them to be better performing in whatever domain, it just isn't there. There's only two real reasons that I've discovered to do burpees, and I've still not had anyone give me anything better. And it's basically, one, you want to be good at burpees, or two, you use it as part of a sprawling pattern in MMA and grappling sports. So you use it to defend against takedowns. And so using burpee variations for that, I mean, it's a sprawl basically. But other than that, it's just an exercise you do to get good at doing that exercise.
I personally couldn't agree more. Burpees, you have to have such an engaged core, and if you allow your back to bend that way, I have always had lower back pain after doing a series of burpees. Are kettlebell swings kind of in that same vein, or that's a little bit different?
No, so kettlebell swings I'm a huge fan of.
Okay.
It's a hinge pattern. The idea is to do it very controlled. Like, there is bad kettlebell swings because they're performed poorly. But the swing itself is basically an explosive deadlift pattern. And there's been a few studies looking at kettlebell swings and back pain, and they are almost always net beneficial to generalized back pain. So they need to be coached well because there's a ballistic component. There is a little bit of a risk, but for glute and hamstring explosiveness, It's easy to regress them using lighter weights or different ranges of motion or changes in speed. It's easy to progress them. You don't need to have super heavy weight to work on, speed and power. I think they're actually a really beneficial exercise, especially for athletic populations.
It's good to know, because I've had the same kind of challenge with kettlebells, worrying about hurting my back. But if you do it the right way, cool.
Yeah, just slow and steady. Be careful with those.
Got it. All right, next question. What's the big deal with ice baths these days?
The garbage. So a lot of people, there's a few categories for why people do ice baths. There is the anti-inflammatory aspect, which, there's some value there. There's the recovery aspect, which really doesn't happen because you're killing the inflammation that's required for the adaptation. If you're trying to build muscle or adapt to stimulus, that inflammation is part of the healing process. You get rid of that, you don't adapt. So it kills your gains. The third main stream of ice bath promotion is because it's tough. And, being tough is cool and all, but you could be tough and do something productive. If you want to be tough, fight. Pick up a combat sport. If you want to be tough, lift weights, grapple, go outside, go hiking, fight a bear, whatever. There's so many more practical and productive ways to be tough that most people don't need another reason to suffer. And so it's kind of this like, oh, this is the coolest new thing, but it kills your gains. And the big thing for me is, all the benefits aside from the anti-inflammatory benefits, but the benefits of being tougher, of increasing localized circulation, of having that adrenaline response that increases your energy, all that can be reproduced with a slap in the face.
Hot take indeed. I love it. All right, I got 3 more questions for you. And then just from your perspective, based on what we've talked about today, especially as it relates to dads in particular, what is your best advice for a down and out dad right now that we maybe haven't talked about?
Take control of one thing that you can take control of in your life. Again, it's baby steps. If you're just not winning, if you feel miserable, if you feel like you're in a rut or life is out of control, then find one thing to take control of. And usually that thing is you. Usually it's something that you can do with yourself. And that could be as simple as, I'm going for a walk. I'm going to eat a little bit extra protein today. I'm going to drink some more water. You know what? I'm going to put that second beer down. But you got to take control of something. And it's usually the easiest thing is you.
Fascinating. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So where can people, Coach Josh Wood, get a hold of you to learn all the things that you do and what you offer?
Well, you can come visit me in Hobart if you like. It's a long flight from the US. Otherwise, my website is strongforlife.online. I've got all my social contacts and services up there. And Instagram, Coach Josh Wood. Well, basically any social platform. It's just Coach Josh Wood. That's probably the easiest option.
I'll link all that down below. Your coaching program in particular, it sounds like you do one-on-one, but also online components as well.
Yeah, pretty much everything I do is online.
Understood. That's great. All right, last question. This doesn't have to be around the fitness or eating or anything like that. You have kids, correct?
Yep, got 2.
All right, awesome. So one question that I try to ask, it's kind of the diamond advice question. So let's say your 2 kids are all grown, but they've forgotten everything you've ever taught them about life, about values, except for one thing. What would be the one thing that you want them to take with them? You're kind of like your diamond advice for them.
You can't control the world. You have to adapt to it. So no matter what, you got to adapt and you got to overcome. There's no other option.
Well said. Coach Josh Wood, it has been an honor. I would love to get back with you. This was a great conversation and some serious nuggets of information. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for having me.